Wake up, thinking the worst thing that'll happen is you spill your coffee, but by lunchtime you're fighting to win back your entire life. That was the day the HOA tried to erase me. And before the sun even set, I made damn sure they regretted it. I pulled onto that old ranch road just as the Wyoming sky started to glow, expecting nothing but the comfort of home, the cold, sweet mix of sagebrush and dust in the air, the quiet ripple from Cottonwood Creek, and that steady promise of cattle stirring a wake. That land, 3 generations worth, 500 acres, wasn't just dirt to me. It was my family's legacy, my whole world. But halfway down the drive, something felt wrong, real wrong. You know, that kind of dread that creeps up your spine when you spot strangers moving around your place. Not neighbors, strangers hauling off your equipment like it's a free yard sale. There they were, trucks I'd never seen, folks in shiny vests shouting orders, somebody dragging off my granddad's old feed wagon. Another guy struggling with the branding chute, cursing like he'd never seen a fence before. My heart pounded slow and heavy. I stopped the truck and stared. A piece of paper was flapping on my gate, slapping the wood like a warning. It was bright red, stamped official. Foreclosure sold to HOA bidder. Effective immediately. I just stood there. I'd never missed a bill, never owed a nickel to anybody. There was no mortgage, no dispute, nothing. But in that cold morning, my land was gone, on paper at least. That's when I heard her voice. "Mr. Carter, we've been expecting you." Tall, polished, all sharp angles, in a red wool coat that didn't belong anywhere near cattle, stood Marilyn Croft, HOA president. Clipboard in hand, blonde hair pinned tighter than a bull rope. Her board members hovered behind her, clicking through tablets, logging every tool and tractor the strangers hauled away. I said, "Expecting me? Why the hell are people stealing my equipment?" She smiled thin, barely there. "Not stealing, transferring ownership. The property was auctioned yesterday. Procedures were followed." Procedures. That word. My fist clenched on that paper. I never missed a tax payment. "What auction?" I growled. She didn't flinch. "Foreclosure auction. Delinquent community impact fees totaling $78,000. The HOA placed a lien on your property months ago. You received notice." I shot back, "I'm not part of any HOA. Never signed, never agreed to anything." She tapped her clipboard like a badge. "Boundary adjustments were filed last year. Cedar Hills extended jurisdiction over adjacent properties. Membership is automatic now." I stared at her, the wind whipping between us. "My grandfather bought this ranch in '54, long before those beige-roofed houses or their plastic rules existed." "You don't get to auto-enroll land," I said. She shrugged, all casual, as if stealing a man's life was a clerical error. "Community standards exist for stability. Consequences follow." Her goons were still hauling off my life. "You're trespassing now," she said quietly. "Best gather personal items and leave before law enforcement arrives." Her smile, wider now, just about broke something inside me. "You think you can take 500 acres with a piece of paper and a fake fee?" She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away, signaling her army to keep going. "You ever get so angry you go cold?" That's where I was. I drove straight to the HOA's community center. My boots thudded on those steps. Inside, a meeting was in full swing, projector lighting up a map my ranch outlined in HOA blue, as if some bored kid scribbled on it with a marker. Marilyn was at the podium, her coat draped like a flag, smug as you please. "Mr. Carter, you're not on the agenda. This is for verified Cedar Hills property owners only." I walked right down the aisle, people staring. "I'm here to find out how you think my ranch ended up on that map." Some guy in a plaid golf vest piped up, "Boundary realignment. Perfectly legal. Filed where I demanded. County offices. We mailed notices to all affected properties. To which address? P.O. Box 227. I almost laughed. "That box expired in 2009. You mailed notices to a dead address." Marilyn just blinked like that was my problem. "We are not responsible for your failure to maintain correct contact information. You manufactured fees. You mailed them to an empty box, then foreclosed without a single real notice," I snapped. She recited, "That's how the system works." I interrupted. "I never joined your HOA, never agreed." She said, "You joined automatically through boundary realignment. It was public record." She tapped her clipboard again. "That little power play. You could have objected." I demanded proof. They handed me a map, the signature block stamped by Richard Clean. But I knew clean he died 10 months before that date. This signature is forged, I said. The room stiffened. Even Marilyn blinked just once before regaining her composure. Our legal team prepared the documents. I leaned in. Your legal team had a dead man sign off. His funeral was at St. Paul's. I was there. Even if this wasn't forged, and it is, you don't get to swallow 500 acres because you want a buffer for your pickleball courts. A couple folks snickered nervously. She slammed her gavel. You are disrupting this meeting. We will have you removed. Just then the sheriff stepped in, Bo Hargreaves' worn-out hat in hand. Morning, Elias. Got a call about a disturbance. Marilyn tried to play it cool. Just an individual refusing to accept the lawful foreclosure. Bo shook his head. Elias, paperwork's processed, stamped, and recorded. Not much I can do. Sheriff, the document they used was signed by a dead man, I told him. He just stared at the page, didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I turned to Marilyn. If one signature is fake, what else is forged? That's when I saw it, a flicker of fear. The first crack in her armor. That night, I walked my fence-lined boots, sinking in the muddy pasture. The sky was turning purple, the air all heavy and strange. I noticed my cattle were scattered, spooked, not settled. I found 3 sections of fence cut clean bolt cutters. That's not vandalism out here. That's sabotage. Someone was trying to push my cattle onto their land so they could claim dangerous livestock and more violations. I crouched by the wire, running my fingers over the cut professional work. I looked toward the subdivision. Porch lights flickered and a few silhouettes stood on the easement road, phones glowing, recording evidence before I even knew the damage. Suddenly I heard footsteps. A skinny boy, 16 maybe, stood awkward, hands jammed in his pockets. Mr. Carter, he said, voice cracking. You out here alone? I asked. He nodded, eyes red. I needed to talk to you. Miss Croft, she said, the HOA needed proof your cattle were a problem. She gave me $50 to cut the fence. Told me no one would know. My anger turned cold. What's your name, son? Wyatt. Wyatt Bloom. You did the right thing coming here, I said. He looked down. I thought it was just a scare thing. I didn't know they'd try to take your whole ranch. I told him, you're not in trouble with me, but I might need you to tell the truth if someone asks. He nodded, scared but brave. That confession was proof. Sabotage, fake boundaries, a whole campaign orchestrated by Marilyn. I took photos of everything, fence cuts, cattle tracks, evidence. I muttered to the night, some men get trapped, other men gather force. Let's see what you break next. For the first time I could see their plan, and my counterattack started to take shape. Next morning, a white HOA SUV pulled up my drive. Out stepped Jeremy from the Enforcement Division, clipboard, puffy jacket, breathing clouds into the cold. I'm here to deliver formal notice of expedited eviction, he announced, holding out a stack of paperwork. You have 10 days to vacate HOA property. I stared him down. This ranch has been Carter land since before your subdivision had a name. He looked at his papers, stammering. The records we have are forged. I finished for him. Signed by a dead surveyor used for fraudulent foreclosure. He flinched. Sir, I'm just doing my job. And I'm just protecting what's mine. I took the envelope. You tell Marilyn further action is exactly what she's going to get. He left so fast you'd think the wind shoved him. Inside those papers was everything: violation notices, fines, maps marking my ranch as Phase 2 resort expansion. At the bottom, Clint Barrow, beneficiary. That name hit me like a cold slap. Clint was a developer, a slick operator who'd skipped out on lawsuits before. If he was involved, the HOA wasn't just harassing me. They wanted to clear the valley for a luxury resort with my land as the crown jewel. I headed straight for the old barn and dug through my father's locked box. That's where I found it. A faded map stamped by the Department of the Interior, 1968. Riparian easement, Cottonwood Creek tributary, federal jurisdiction. That document, federal protection overriding any HOA, any county redraw. It was a shield. If I could prove it still stood, they'd never touch my land. I drove to Cheyenne, map tucked safe. I met with Rachel, an attorney who knew how to fight dirty fights clean. She saw the map, and her eyes went sharp. Elias, this is a weapon. Tell me everything. So I did: fake signatures, fence cutting, Wyatt's confession, developer plans. She went to work digging through tax filings, uncovering that the HOA was funneling money to Barrow's company, not paying taxes, snapping up foreclosed properties dirt cheap, handing them to board members' families. The judge signing off had received campaign donations from Barrow's fund. Elias Rachel said, "You're not just fighting for your ranch. You may end up exposing the biggest land fraud this county's ever seen." 2 days later, I attended the HOA's so-called Community Safety Forum. It was a circus pamphlets painting my ranch as a toxic dump neighbors, giving rehearsed speeches about property values and roosters waking their kids. Marilyn ran the show, introducing a scientist already discredited for faking stats in another case. It was all theater. When she finished, I stood. "Those cattle were only on your land because someone cut my fence," I said. I showed the proof photos, tracks, a witness. The crowd went dead silent. Marilyn blanched. I held up my phone, every minute of Wyatt's confession recorded. The silence was thick as winter fog. This was no longer her show. Next morning, my kitchen became a war room. Rachel combed through documents, highlighting every piece of deliberate fraud. "This is racketeering," she said. "Interstate fraud. Federal prison material." Wyatt returned frightened. His mom threatened with eviction by Marilyn. He brought a map, Phase 3, targeting the entire valley, all so Barrow could make $40 million on a resort. With Rachel, Wyatt, and a deputy clerk hunting for official records, I gathered every deed, tax receipt, anything to prove my claim. My father used to say, "The land remembers the hands that honor it." I felt that sitting in the barn, lantern light flickering over old tools and a photo of my grandfather. That night I signed the papers to form the Cottonwood Conservation District. With approval, I'd have the authority to reclaim any land the HOA stole, even their subdivision. Next day, the courthouse square was packed, news vans, protesters, residents. Inside, Marilyn and Clint looked smug at their table. The judge called the hearing. Marilyn demanded my ranch's operations be shut down. Rachel Rose presented the forged boundary document signed by a dead man, the emails proving collusion between Marilyn and Clint, the unpaid tax records, the federal easement map. Wyatt testified. The judge's face went hard as stone. The court acknowledges substantial evidence of fraud, forgery, and deliberate harassment. I invoked eminent domain as head of the new conservation district, reclaiming every illegally annexed property. Every Cedar Hills parcel at agricultural value $800 apiece. Marilyn shrieked. Clint tried to slip out the back. The judge called for federal agents. Rachel smiled. "It's done, Elias." Outside, as Marilyn and Clint were led away in cuffs, the wind carried the scent of sage and dust. Sheriff Bowe nodded. "That was one hell of a case, not a case I said. A reckoning." The following week, Cedar Hills Estates was under conservation authority. Residents gathered, fearful, angry, confused. I told them, "You're not being evicted. You can lease your homes at agricultural rates. No bulldozers, no tricks. You'll be part of a conservation community. The land will heal, the rules will be fair." For the first time, hope warmed the room. Days later, Wyatt and I walked the land. "You think people will be okay with this?" he asked. "Folks are tougher than they look," I said. Rachel joined us, papers in hand. "You did something big, Elias," she said. "People will talk about this for years." "I didn't do it alone," I said. She smiled. "But you were the spark." That night the sun set like molten gold across the valley. I stood on my porch, peaceful, boots planted firm. They tried to steal my legacy. Instead, they handed me the power to protect everyone else's. And the land, steady as ever, carried that justice on the wind. So tell me, have you ever stood your ground when someone tried to push you around? If you have, drop a yes in the comments. And if stories about justice, land, and dignity mean something to you, stick around. There's plenty more truth out here waiting to be told.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.